All right. Good morning. Thank you for hanging with us. If you're just joining us now, yay for technical difficulties, but we're excited to be with you this morning. Whether you're on your commute or your afternoon walk, good morning, good afternoon. We're coming in from Miami and from Vienna. We're glad that we all finally made it. We are here every week. We are here this week talking about our Engage Talent Strategy series, where we discuss how to build strong people strategy around hiring, teams, leadership, culture. And this session marks the second of 5 sessions that we're going to give an overview of our talent model. So we're going to take you through each of the components over the next few weeks, because our hope is that we want you to have good people strategy, and we're here to help you do that. So last week we talked about how to hire the right talent. If you have not seen that video, go check it out. It's on Loop. You can find it on LinkedIn, on our pages. Put your comments, ask your questions. We keep an eye on it. We are experts in people and communication, and we're excited to take you on this journey. Welcome Elizabeth Miller of Talk with ECM. She is a communication and verbal branding expert. I am Michelle Alexandrowitz, CEO of Engage and an expert in psychology in the workplace. So thank you again for joining us. Drop a comment. Let us know where you're coming in from. Are you on the train? We have some birthdays today. A shout out to Denise Romanelli. Happy birthday. Thank you for joining us today on your special day.
Wow.
I know. So our 30-minute talk today, which may be a little bit shorter based on our time, we're going to take some time to explore the challenges that organizations face when we're building strong teams. And we're going to take some time to talk about, why is building a strong team complex? Why is it difficult? What are the different challenges that we've seen in our clients and our organizations? And we're going to talk about some ways to be able to solve these problems through real life experiences and stories. And we can't have this conversation without you, which means let us know what your experiences are. Let us know what your questions are, because this is something that, it's not a skill that once you learn, it's done. It's not like riding a bike. It's something that we all need to constantly practice, right? Okay. How are we doing, Elizabeth? Are we ready to get this conversation happening?
Yeah, I'm giving links in the old location for people to join us here. So hopefully we'll see some people making that leap over to join us here for all
Awesome.
of this good stuff.
Well, let's start the conversation, and let's start the conversation with, why is this such a challenge? Why is building a strong team so challenging for organizations? I say all the time, you can have 5 all-stars on your team, but if you don't know what their skill is, what the goal is, if they don't know what they're doing, it doesn't matter. So we talked last week, like this war on talent, like getting the right person in the right role. So imagine you get that person, the challenge isn't done yet. Now we need to get them working with the rest of the team. So let's start to have that conversation, and we're going to do it again. I'm going to speak from the employer side, from the leader side, and Elizabeth is going to talk from the employee side. And if you're listening in, take whatever perspective you want to contribute to the conversation here.
We love comments. We love feedback. So keep them coming. And it also lets us know that you made that leap over into this location.
In this part. All right. So I'm going to give a few points to kind of get the conversation going on why building a strong team is so challenging. I think the biggest thing that just pops up, which sounds simple, but everyone's different, right? I always say in math, 2 + 2 is always 4, no matter how you feel. But if you take 2 people and put them in the same situation, you're going to get a different result every time. So everyone has different motivators. Everyone has different needs. Everyone is wired differently. Everyone has different communication styles. And it's up to the leader to understand all of those dynamics and use them to the advantage of the group. I always use the expression, the whole should be greater than the sum of its parts. So each individual person is not able to contribute as much as when everyone's together. And one of the biggest challenges is recognizing all of those needs, those different needs and motivators, right? Elizabeth, what are you seeing on the employee side of things? We can bounce back and forth a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, I think this links very much to what you just said about everyone has different needs and motivations and motivators and what's driving them. What are their
What's
goals?
driving them?
Yeah, what's driving them? I mean, yeah, sure, we may have the goals listed out clearly of our goals internally in the company, but what's my driver because of what I'm bringing from at home? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel as strong at home. I want to feel stronger at work. What are all the stories I'm telling myself in my head? We're all different, and that can lead to power dynamics within the team,
Mm,
right? So maybe there are personality differences or misunderstandings or just baggage that we carry into work that we don't see in other people. And so how is that playing into the power dynamics in the team? Or are people intimidated or afraid of leaders? Is there this a little bit of like you can't non-approachability? Or even a lack, in worst case scenario, lack of safety, psychological safety. Can
that's a
I
big
be
one.
myself? Can I make
Right.
mistakes? Is it okay if I'm experimenting and I fail? And so if I don't feel those things, this leads very much into trust issues and psychological trust. If I don't have trust, and if I make one mistake, I'm going to be punished, lose my job, kicked out. That's going to change how we work together as a team, isn't it?
Elizabeth, you put this equation out beautifully. So let me reshift it to the manager side, right? We talked about those differences. So imagine you have a team of people with those differences. The power dynamics, I don't know if you're a leader that have ever experienced that in your team or when you're a part of a team, but typically when we see those power dynamics, it's typically because the differences of how we're wired are not being met in the workplace. So out of insecurity, we become defensive, or that's where the power struggle comes in, right? So when you see that power dynamic, that's your check engine light. As a leader, if you see that, you should go, something's happening here, something's going on. And the more you leave that untapped or unaddressed, it starts to erode psychological safety, which is a big topic right now. People don't feel safe to make mistakes. They don't feel safe to speak up. And then what happens? The trust of the team breaks down, and then forget your KPIs and your goals. Just
Absolutely.
forget it, you know? So a lot of the challenge is, how do I communicate on the level that my team needs? And then on top of that, there has to be a strong vision, strategy, and clarity. And that's the other big piece that's the challenge when we're trying to build strong teams. If you don't have strategy and if you don't have vision for your team, you're leaving things up to chance. And this is one of the biggest things I see with leaders, especially transitioning into leadership. They just spend more time on the day to day. And that's, as a leader, you should not be doing that. As a leader, you should be seeing your day to day becoming less and less, and strategy becoming more and more. You should be spending at least 50% of your time as a leader strategizing on your team, on the dynamics, on the market, on the business strategy. That's your job as a leader. And it all starts with understanding how to connect and communicate.
Great. I just want to say I see some people joining us. A big hello. I see it looks like there are 5 people. Leave a comment. Let us know where you're listening in from. Glad you made the jump from the last location to our new location. And just want to interrupt with that, and also jumping on what Michelle said. Absolutely. I mean, that's one thing from an employee perspective. People, managers, leaders who are lacking leadership skills. If And that means, are you leading us or are you micromanaging? Are you leading
Mm,
us or are you putting out fires? Are you leading us with this strategy piece that Michelle is emphasizing so well? If you are, that's great. You're doing your job. That's what we need. We need leadership skills. Otherwise, it just gets all muddled in the mess and everyone's lost.
exactly. So let's start to talk about how we can solve, because I think we could talk all day on the challenges. And if you have a particular challenge, like, drop it and let us know. But let's spend most of the time on talking about, like, how do we actually address this. So Elizabeth started to tap into it a little bit, where she's like, would you rather be a firefighter, or would you rather be the orchestra of the team, right? Like stuck in the day-to-day, or working on the strategy. And let me tell you something, that's the first place where you start to solve this problem. What's the vision? What are the goals? What are the KPIs? And does everyone on the team have alignment? And do they know what their role is in contributing that? Am I just building doodads every day? How am I understanding that building the doodads contributes to whatever it is that you're trying to bring them to? So by starting to solve this problem, you need the strategy, you need the clarity of the goals and the roles, and then you need to practice the art of meaningful conversations. And this might be a theme that we see over and over. And I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but conversations are the catalyst for change. Conversations are the catalyst to problem solve. I think the biggest problem that leaders fall into is they think that they need to magically have all the answers. And what we start to find is that it's actually your team that has the answers. It's not you, it's the team that has the answers. So as a leader, are you having those conversations? And are you equipping your team and people to have those conversations with one another in a way that makes sense for them, right? How about a little story? So I've heard this through the grapevine. There was a group of leaders that, they didn't like to be put on the spot. I'm not good at thinking out loud. And maybe some of you out there are like this. If you had the choice to be able to think out loud with a group, or give me a minute, I need to process on my own, have some quiet time, think through what I'm going to say, and then I will present it to you. Right? Those are two different differences in how we communicate. So I heard one time of a leader took this team that needed that, I need to process, I need to think, and he had an entire meeting on Zoom in just the chat section. No video, no audio. There may have been some visuals like screen sharing to kind of guide the conversation, but all of the communication that happened with that team happened via chat. And everyone came back and said it was the most impactful meeting that they ever had. Why? Because that leader tapped into the communication process of the people on his team. He knew that they didn't like to be on screen. They knew that they didn't like the spotlight, but he knew that there was knowledge and wisdom in that team that he needed to draw out. So he created an environment that was comfortable for his team, where everyone felt like, I can think before I type, I can delete, I can cut and paste, and I can put my voice out there in a way that is meaningful for me. And that leader created that path and that journey for that to happen.
That's fantastic.
Isn't that wild? And communication went through the roof after that.
Yeah. I have a few notes. Please correct me with pronunciation here. It looks like Ilana. Maria. Ilana, is that? She's leaving some great comments. She says, great to be here to gather knowledge, as well as, and this I think is golden, I want my team to make the mistakes to learn from them, knowing they are not going to be reprimanding them for it. That sounds like a great place to work, right?
That is a great place to, yeah. How do you celebrate the things that didn't go well? Is there a place to celebrate, Elizabeth tried something new and it didn't work, but now she's better at it, right? Now we know what not to do, kind of thing. Same thing, and as leaders, to be able to have that honest conversation. Brilliant. Yes.
I think that there's a lot of experimenting and trial and error encouragement that goes on in marketing and reaching out to customers. Like, you're trying different ways to do it and you want to get that return on investment. If it doesn't work, well, then pivot, try something else. But there are other areas that are much less forgiving. Quality control, for example. If you're just experimenting and trying different things, how can we find a way to make a mistake not the end of the world?
Right.
How can we manage that? I love the way she put that. Eliana put it, to make those mistakes. So yes, mistakes are going to happen, but here's the key piece: to learn from them, to how to create the environment where you're not only giving lip service to this, but you're actually integrating this into the system.
Exactly. Yep, that's a great habit to be able to pull.
Yeah.
One of the other successes that we see when you're trying to solve a problem or when you're trying to build strong teams, whether you're bringing them together for the first time, or maybe you're in a rut or struggling with something, like whatever the reason may be, if your vision is to, how do I build a strong team? One of the best ways to start to do that is get out of the office. Get out of the office. Get out of like the muck that you're in and figure out how to create a breath of fresh air. How can I re-inspire? How can I reinvigorate? And this can happen on the small scale and it can happen on the large scale. So on the small scale is things like let's do a happy hour after work. Or depending on the group, because I'm not always a big fan of happy hours, what if we do an hour coffee at the beginning of the day? So maybe we go to the Starbucks down the street as a team, or we bring coffee in or whatever, and we create like a moment of time where we're together and we're not in the work and we're connecting in a way that's not focused on the work. Because when you connect in a way that's not just focused on the work, you're building more connections, communication avenues, more likable moments. We need to have fun with our coworkers, right? Because being fun and being silly is a form of vulnerability. So when we're able to have that joyful vulnerability, we're more likely to be able to sit in our mistakes and be honest with our team if we're able, that's kind of a great parallel to be able to do that.
Transfers over nicely.
It transfers over very well. And then, from there, that's just like the coffee talk. But then as a leader, you should be thinking about offsites. Are you bringing your team offsite at least once a year to talk about, okay, here was the past year, here were the goals, or maybe we're in the middle of a problem or a crisis. Let's get off campus, clear our heads and think for a minute. So maybe you need a fresh strategy session. Maybe you need a team session. Like and that's the work that me and Elizabeth do. We help bring you out of those ruts and we help you reconnect and communicate in a way that's going to set you back on that journey towards your goals. You're refreshed. You have new insight about how you work. And that's the strategy work. Remember in the beginning, I said as a leader, you should be thinking strategically, not day to day all the time. That's a strategy move. And it usually bumps our performance. Yeah. People think, oh, I can't take you off the floor. And that's a challenge. It is. I do not want to minimize the challenge of pulling people off of a floor, off of the work, right? But it's also one of those things when you take that break, you create more capacity and you create more breath and you give the muscles a chance to relax and heal to be able to come back in a strong way. It's just like rest. You need sleep at night. From a team perspective, you kind of need the same thing. You need those emotional refreshers to be able to problem solve more efficiently. How have you seen this play out in your work, Elizabeth, from the employee side?
You made about rest and just refreshing it and the muscles if you're in more physical labor, or the brain is also needs to refresh and think in different ways.
Yeah, the brain is a muscle.
Yeah.
Brain is a muscle. You have to feed it. You have to give it rest. I'm serious. One time I was in a very deep, I was in graduate school and I was really struggling. I was really foggy. And it dawned on me, I'm like, oh, I need to eat more. I needed more I did not have the energy to do the brain power that was required for the difficult tasks at hand. So your team is a breathing, living unit with multiple people. So when it works together collectively, it also needs those things.
And we have another comment here from Ileana.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, a happy team is a productive team.
A happy team is a productive team. Exactly. Thank you, Ileana.
From the employee perspective or from the individual, one thing that I always say where the work should start is with ourselves, right? So start with ourselves, get crystal clear, ask the questions, what do I want? What do I really want? If the team is stuck and it's not working and it's, I can't think, okay, I really want that person to leave the office. I want them to die. I want their project to fail. Okay, that's not what I really want.
No.
What do I really want? What do I need? And this is also key. What value am I bringing to the team? So getting super crystal clear about this. What do I want? What do I need? And what value am I bringing to the team? Then I have the three things I need to start having those meaningful conversations with other team members, with the leaders about how we can get unstuck and move forward. In the last talk, we talked about in every job interview when you're being hired and hiring the right people. One piece is, do I have the skills to be here and do the work? The other one is, how do I fit? And in theory, when we're hired, everyone agrees, me and the employer, that I'm a good fit. So kind of getting back in touch with that again is important, and how I can contribute.
Thank you for sharing, because what I'm hearing you talk about is essentially that personal commitment as a team member. Am I going to commit to the work? And we've all been there. We've all been like on the edge of like, do I really want to put my energy and effort into this? Because work is frustrating and leaders are humans too. So our teams are humans, right?
Wait, what? When did that happen?
Never, right? So there needs to be this internal moment where you decide to actively be a team member and think about how you want to interact with your team and engage with your team in a way that's meaningful, right? Because you have the power to kind of step on the periphery and be like, not my jam. Have you ever been on a team with someone that was like on the outskirts and not really committed? It's a weight that pulls the group down. So I think, thank you, Elizabeth, for saying that. It starts with that internal decision. And it's also up to the team to invite. If you see someone on the periphery that's not as engaged, is there an opportunity as a team to like reach out and support each other? We would see this in sports all the time, which connects to performance psychology. A team that performs well is a team that like actively engages with one another. So what you're starting to bring up, Elizabeth, is there's leadership, but there's followership too. Mm-hmm. There's the power of the leader to say, here's the vision, here's the goal of what we're doing. But then you have the team members that are saying, we're going to be good like followers and we're going to actively contribute. And followership is not a bad word. You cannot be a good leader without being a good follower first, which means you cannot be a good leader without being a good team member first. So leadership really starts, it's everywhere. It sounds cliche, but everyone holds the role of leader in some capacity.
And I'd like to piggyback on that idea. Like, one thing I see in teams that are failing, and when we want to get them back on track again, is from the leaders and doing that strategy work that Michelle has talked about before. I think it's so important. It's crucial that you give us your vision. Give us direction. What's the goal? What are we setting our sights on? And not every day a moving target. Have a clear vision and direction. And I don't need you or expect you to have all the answers. Engage with us. Engage with your team members. Be open to the conversation. Be open to ideas. Be open to mistakes, like we talked about before. And we, the team members, all the team members, will help provide the solutions, right? You don't need to be the expert about everything. You just need to give the goal. What are we looking at? Where are we setting our sights for? And the answers that you're looking for can come from the team. I mean, that's what we want, right?
Exactly. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So if I can unpack that for a second, if you've been a part of my workshops or any of my trainings, you have heard this before. Okay. So for the new people here, I'm going to educate you, but this is the one piece I say over and over and over again with teams. When you have individual team members, think about the analogy comes through horses. If you have horses and a horse can pull 1,000 pounds, when it links with another horse, how much weight can it pull? Well, logically, we would say, what, 2,000 pounds, 1,000 plus 1,000. But here's the crazy part. It can actually pull like 3,000 pounds when it's linked together. So what that means is when you are linked with your team, you're able to pull more weight together than you could individually. So if you're feeling burned out, or if you're feeling tired, or as a leader, if you're feeling exhausted, that is an opportunity for you to lean into the power of the team, because a strong team will be able to pull more weight than they could individually. If you had 5 people individually doing that work, that's why teams are so powerful. That's why teams are so powerful. Now, I know we talked, there are some real costs associated with it. And I mean that very practically, right? Like we're
Actually,
pulling
before
people
you
from,
jump into that, I think you should talk about some of the things you can do to help. I mean, talking about this juice of how powerful a team is, how can we get it? Don't tease me with that.
how can we get it?
Yeah. What can you do to help us?
Well, first of all, think of any good sports team, right? Think of your favorite sports team winning the championship. Every single one of those teams has a coach.
Mm,
Every single one of those teams has someone somewhat on the outside that from the sidelines is watching them play and helping them guide that strategy.
has the big picture.
And those are the roles that Elizabeth and I play. And with my background in psychology, what my job is to step in with a team and help you understand the dynamics that make your team unique and special. And we spend time talking about that. So we help teams get out of the office and we help remotivate, re-energize, and help create that momentum that you need. So when you take that breath and you step outside and you connect with other people in the industry at large, we have the ability to help infuse that work. So now you're inviting another team member in for a very short time, right? But when you invite those outside forces in, it's a way to create that momentum and it's a way to create that wave of enthusiasm and inspiration, right? What about you, Elizabeth?
Great. I just noticed that we have some more people jumping in. So glad to have you
Great.
here with us. Say hi, drop a message. We're trying to integrate. And if you have some experiences or feedback, leave a comment. I'll read them aloud as we are live. We've got some listeners in. Great to have you here. Yeah, I was just
Awesome.
thinking about some things that we can offer and to help with. I mean, yeah, I think I love your analogy of the horses because once that momentum is there and once things are moving, synergies happen and just goodness brings out more goodness, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I like to talk to people about leadership presence and having the conversations that matter. If you're interested in that, feel free to drop me a line and keep this conversation after our session so we can talk about it.
Exactly.
So, drop a comment and leave a message. Let us know where you're listening in from. Of course, if you're driving, do not do anything dangerous. We don't want that. Totally against that. But if you have some extra fingers and can leave a comment, we'd love that. So, Michelle, you were about to jump into that question of what is the real cause of not
Yeah.
intentionally building teams or a people strategy? Ugh.
Yeah, and when we talk about the real cost, let's talk about a real cost for a minute. When you pull people off the floor, right? Even for a
Mm,
team meeting, right? You're pulling people away from their work, and that's potentially lost revenue, right? If you're paying for an offsite, if you're paying for lunch or coffee, those are real costs that do need to be justified, right?
and
So
added
let's
up.
take a minute and talk about if I'm going to invest this time by pulling people out or taking them off site, what is the real cost of not doing this? Because it's easy to be like, budget's tight, like we don't have the time, like let's just, kind of like hunker down and stay focused. Here's what starts to happen when we don't address these things and we don't build in these systematic touch points of like our regular leadership strategy meetings or our quarterly team connections, whatever. What we start to see is engagement or burnout. Those are usually the first two triggers that start to happen. So we kind of talked about it either earlier with the team member that's kind of on the periph.
Mm,
That's lack of engagement. That's someone
lack of
being like, you know
engagement.
what? This is not worth my time and energy. I'm going to do like less than the bare minimum, or I'm not going to contribute my brilliance because it's not sought after. People don't think I have something to contribute,
Just a
right?
second. I want to talk about brilliance because I'm seeing
Yeah.
some brilliance right here in the chat. Hello, Denise from Cape May, New Jersey.
Oh
And we
boy.
have Maria from Pensacola, New Jersey. So New Jersey's representing large
Here
today.
we go. Here we go. Jersey folk. They have
Fancy.
a thing, right? So with our engagement, the other big thing that we're seeing right now is burnout.
Oh yeah,
Any
that's
hands
a
in
big
the air
cost.
of experiencing burnout? That it's rampant. It's all we hear about these days, right? So let's think about the real cost of burnout, and let's think about the real cost of a lack of engagement in your team. When you don't have the full energy, emotional energy, or even physical energy to be able to contribute to the team, do I need to finish the sentence? What starts to happen? Right? Our goals start to slide, and then we start to see issues with retention, right? Higher burnout tends to lead to higher levels of absenteeism. Higher levels of absenteeism start to lead to turnover, because what's happening is the job is sucking the life out of the person. And most of the time, people, I believe, genuinely want to contribute. They are looking for purpose. They're looking for a way for their skills to be utilized. We talked about that last week with hiring. One of the number one reasons that people leave is because their skills or expertise is not utilized properly. So what do people do? I'm not wanted here. People don't want to like work with me, even though I'm trying to contribute. And that's the team that you got to pull that in. So we see engagement, we see burnout, and ultimately it starts to kill your retention, right? And retention keeps you stuck in this loop. You can't grow because you're constantly inviting people in to get to know the work, and you're never going to get that launch because it's this revolving door, right? Now those are the obvious ones, but maybe some real costs that are a little less seen is knowledge loss.
Yeah.
There's a lot of knowledge that lives in a team. Maybe someone's been at that company for a long time and you have legacy knowledge, you have expertise knowledge, and you're losing that. Even if the person is still at your company, remember, you can put an all-star, you can put a Michael Jordan, you can have a Michael Jordan on your team. If you put him on the pitcher's mound, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for, right? So same thing, look at the dynamics of the team. Where's the knowledge? And that's going to walk out the door as well.
Yeah.
You're missing out on unpotential growth. You've got potential and emerging leaders on your team, and if you're not engaging them at the team level, they're never going to engage at the leadership level. So these are some of the real costs of not taking the time to think strategy, of not taking the time to bring your teams together, of not taking the time to say, hey, we do behavioral assessments. Let's understand everyone's style of communication. It's so little. And I think that's the most important thing. If you put just a little bit of effort into the strategy work of your team, you get that big return because you're showing care. You're taking the time to like show intention and care your team to rocket them forward. People just want to see that you're trying. So any kind of effort behind that goes a long, long way. And it's an experiment you can try. Try it as an experiment. As a leader, you should be experimenting all the time.
Which also means it's okay for leaders to make mistakes too.
Of
And
course.
you want to talk about this culture of making it okay for people to experiment and make mistakes. The best way to create that culture is to live that culture.
Yeah.
And start with yourself. Make yourself vulnerable. I mean, making mistakes intentionally and being a bumbling idiot is one category, and experimenting and trying new things to push things forward and making mistakes in the process is another thing. And that's what we're talking about, obviously. I mean, but I really like this question. What is the real cost of not
Mm-hmm.
intentionally building teams and people? And that's why I say every interview also is about the fit. Am I a good fit for this company, for this team? And if I'm not, let's talk about either how we can adjust things so that I am a good fit, so that I can work, so that I can bring value and grow the team and grow the potential of the team and what we're capable of,
Mm-hmm.
or shift to another team or shift to another role or shift to another company. I mean, depending on where the mismatch is. Because the real costs of not being a good fit are enormous, not only for
Mm-hmm.
me as an individual, hating and just having the drudgery of going into a place to work where I don't want to, where I don't feel appreciated, where I don't feel good, where I don't feel like I want to do the work. um it's a psychological illness almost that becomes then a physical illness. Stress and burnout and all of these things are not things we want to
Mhm.
do. Definitely not intentionally want to do them. And so who pays the cost? Definitely me as an individual. And Michelle already talked about this. If one person's showing up with this kind of weight, it kind of brings the whole team down and brings that negative energy, which is then a bit addictive or contagious.
It's very contagious.
Yeah,
Yes, we spend a lot of time talking about that in our sessions for
very
sure.
contagious. Addictive was not
Huge.
the word I wanted. Contagious was the word I
Mhm,
wanted.
that was
And
a
so
good
then it
one.
brings everyone to, so now the team is paying this cost and contagious. And they also, and you know what? The company really has to consider this cost, because either a slow, toxic team, or a team that, people are constantly leaving, so then you have to pay for new hires and new training and just starting all over again, which is wasted time and money that maybe if a little bit of pre-work was done, a little bit of investment could have been avoided.
Tens of thousands of dollars easily for just one person. And we're just talking about the teams and the employees. What about your customers?
Yes.
Your customers also pay the cost. Your customers pay the cost of you having bad teams.
Let's talk about someone who has a personal relationship, an account manager. Suddenly they're gone. Suddenly they're burnt out. Suddenly they're with that negative energy. I want to do the minimum
Mhm.
here because I'm not motivated, because I'm not appreciated, because I'm afraid of making a mistake that I'm now paralyzed.
That's right.
All
Mhm.
connected. The customer's
All
paying.
connected. Yeah, customers directly impacted. Your customers rely on your teams to be efficient, with good communication skills, to be able to respond to their needs. And if they're struggling on the inside, they're not going to be able to meet your customer or your client needs. So,
On the
with
outside.
that, contagious, that's a great word.
Yeah.
And a lot of this work, you alluded to it before, it starts with the self, you know and that starts to become a good transition. What we're going to talk about next week is we're going to start to dig into, okay, how do I develop as a leader? What are the true expectations of a leader? Right? So we've spent the first two talking about hiring the right talent, getting the team together. Now it's time to start cooking. As a leader, you got to put the right hat on with the right edge. So we're going to talk next time about, how do I look at myself as a leader? And how do you start to develop and grow the potential leaders in your team? I will leave you with one of my favorite sentences I always say when I do my leadership boot camps and classes is, you are not a leader until you know how to develop another leader that can develop another leader.
Woo!
I'll say it again for the people in the back. You are not a leader until you know how to develop another leader that knows how to develop another leader,
The whole
right?
package.
The whole package. So that's what we're going to be talking about next time. But listen, like we said, Elizabeth and I are here to help you. So if you want to talk, we do team talent strategy sessions. That is a great way to kind of get the conversation started, a way to look at your team and analyze the strengths and the gaps compared to your objectives. We have behavioral assessments that we can give you for free. So if you want to understand like how you're wired as a person and the dynamics in your team, reach out to us and ask for a behavioral assessment. And that's a great way to start this. We're here to help you with team retreats. Elizabeth is here to help you with leadership presence. If I can add too, especially if English is not your first language, that is something that Elizabeth specializes in. So if English is not your first language and you're looking for more leadership presence, this is her area of expertise. And we're going to be talking about this next week in our session.
Definitely. Lots of years as an English teacher with adults. So, nothing to be afraid of. We're going to do this together. I do want to
Yep.
give a quick shout out to our Jersey girls. We've got
Our Jersey
Denise
girls.
and Maria, and yeah, showing up live. Although Philly, I mean, can we hear it for Pennsylvania?
Mm-hmm.
Which side of the fence do you sit on, Michelle?
Oh, Philly,
Really,
100%.
100%. All right, all right,
Mm-hmm.
all right. But that whole northeast mid-Atlantic, we got it. We've got it showing up large. And
We
here
do.
in Vienna, Austria, it's nearly 3 in the afternoon, time for me to go get my daughter. How about that?
Okay. So thank you for joining us today. If you are a company trying to manage your team successfully, you are not alone, and there are a lot of people and resources out there to help you. So please reach out, continue to drop your comments, ask your questions. We're learning from you too. Part of the reason we do this is because we work with clients and companies and we say, hey, let's bring some of these themes out to everyone. So we're not making this stuff up. This comes from real life experiences. And if you want extra support in figuring out how to do this, we can absolutely help you with that. So thank you for joining us today and for all of the jumping around and the technical issues, but continue to engage, either message us or in the comments, and we can't wait to have this conversation with you again next week where we talk about the power of leaders.
Yay.
Okay, so have a wonderful day. Goodbye for now, and we will see you next week.
Ciao.